think it is an issue of we have to do it less globally, and I really want to underscore the importance of what you're saying. We certainly have to start in the developed world and in the United States. What I was going to offer as a comment in terms of work that we've done in Physicians for Social Responsibility here in the United States is in partnership with organizations such as Healthcare Without Harm, really trying to take responsibility around the energy use within the health community. So Kaiser Hospital, in conjunction with organizations like Catholic Healthcare West, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, are all in a partnership called the Healthy Hospitals Initiative, which is looking to reduce the ecological footprint of the system. And this is especially important since currently we're so blocked at the national political level by, you know, having a majority of Republicans not even believing that climate change is happening leads to some impediment. So there's an important focus on transforming our own institutions and taking responsibility thereof. So we have a national program that deals with reducing energy use when we have to retrofit our hospitals to develop green forms of construction together with a lot of creative forces within the architectural community, and which dovetails with your comments about food. Is we have, and Dr. Prasad and her daughter Rama also very much working on this locally. We have a Healthy Food in Hospitals campaign. So this has manifold components. One, of course, to reduce the health consequences of diabetes and obesity at one level of health, but the other piece of it is to reduce the ecological footprint because, as you very eloquently pointed out, even reducing, you know, beef down to chicken reduces the footprint, the amount of water that's used, the amount of food miles. We can go through all the details. It's not as important as much as understanding that these are important institutional things to institute. So it's at Kaiser and other hospitals, it's like one meatless Monday as a foot in the door to begin to have these types of transformations. So that's a comment that I had meant to raise from the floor to support what you're saying. I'd like to raise more of a question for the whole panel as well, because we've talked about individual initiatives that I think are extremely important and funding them. But there is a reality of resources at the national level and national political will. And we have just seen, even from reading the New York Times over the last month or so, how China has positioned itself with its industrial policy to move from somewhere being third or fifth in solar technology, so now leading the world, by being able to have a concerted program. I was in India, my first and most recent time, in 2008 as a delegate to the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War that had their conference in Delhi, and which involved, as the sponsor of the organization, the Indian Doctors for Peace and Development. And they pointed out that up until this point, $40 billion had been spent on nuclear power. It was a very high-end technological development in India, and it only provided for 4% of the energy needs of India, whereas even up at that point, and this is based on information from one of the sponsoring organizations, the institute that's in Delhi, had claimed that 8% of energy needs in India were at that point handled by sustainable types of technologies. So my question is, in terms of looking, and I'm in no way pitting India against the overconsumption in the United States and other places, but in terms of energy choices that any country has, I would question my own organization as well as the Indian Doctors for Peace and Development have questioned the support of Prime Minister Singh, who I spoke to about this when I was in India, about the U.S.-India nuclear deal, for example, and what that represents in terms of massive amounts of money that are going for a very high-tech solution, which has major consequences for nuclear weapons proliferation, and I would submit going the more low-tech route, as we should be doing here. I mean, we should not be having the nuclear renaissance here either, would be a better way for India to proceed. I have other comments about the arms deals that President Obama is sealing and what that represents also in terms of resource allocation, it can go better. So I'll leave it at that. I didn't want to take up this much time to begin with, but I'd be interested in your comments and others.
There is a lot of need in the villages which are not even connected by electricity, the electric grid. There's one village I had gone to in Orissa where they had a big electric pole in the center of the village, but they had no lights. So I asked them, why aren't you using the electricity that's there, the poles? And they said, the transformer broke 15 years ago and no one's fixed it. Okay? But in the bureaucratic maps, it is an electrified village.
Yeah.
Okay. So clearly, for the villages of India, solar or some form of distributed energy system is the way to go. And as they spring up, with the energy from, and the sun is falling on their heads all the time, and they're heating them up. They don't really want all that heat, right? So if you could use that, tap into that energy source that's freely available, then they could become the nucleus of a distributed energy system that starts from the village and then goes out. So the surplus gets sold to the next village and so on and so forth. So the purpose of the government should be to build a good grid based on that afterwards. Right? The other thing I noticed, one more thing I wanted to point out, that we first started Climate Healers as the lighting project. So it's very similar to what the realization you had is that there are all these people without electricity. Why don't we give them lights and so that they don't burn kerosene? And the village I went to in Rajasthan, they asked me, why do you want to change the night? God gave us night so we can go to sleep. So they barely got any kerosene. Okay? Because the kerosene shop was 8 kilometers away and the guy wouldn't even be there when they walked all the way over. So they would come back empty-handed. So they just didn't depend on light at all. Whatever kerosene they had, they were using it to start their fires for their cooking, because they were cooking so much. But once we gave them the solar lights, that became the most important possession in the household. This is a transformation that happened once they got it. Because in that village, the women used to go into the forest early in the morning to do their business, and they used to get bitten by snakes. And once they got the lights, they could see the snakes, so they didn't step on them. So that in that village, they used to have every year 20 to 30 snake bites among women, and the year we gave them the lights, they had 0. So we became like the deliverers for the women.
There's a high unemployment rate, 20 to 25%. And Anna Sidama, if you are working on 1 million lights, there's also talk about in India, they have somewhat backward region or Adivasi regions, and they are non-technical people. So those non-technical Adivasis could manufacture solar lanterns, and you could generate more employment in all the Adivasi regions.
Yep, that's a very good question, and actually that is our vision. Right now we source lights from the cheapest source that is locally available. So in India, we work with Indian manufacturers. In Africa, we work with African companies that provide us with product. But eventually our vision is to create something which can be locally assembled, easily distributed and maintained, and creates local employment. That is our long-term vision.
And in turn, you can reduce the climatic, that instead of shipping products from one place to another place, say a product which is manufactured in India, if it is shipped to Africa, it's not good. Each taluka or each district should have some small amount of manufacturing center.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely.